Thunderbelt has just been revamped, and while it retains a passive that deals true damage, the revamped version is still massively different from the previous one. In this video, I'm going to analyze how good or bad the new Thunderbelt is and whether it's worth including it in your builds. So, let's first start with the base stats. Thunderbelt costs 1820 gold and provides 800 HP, 15 physical and magic defense, and 20 movement speed. Based on my calculations, it has a 97% base stat goal efficiency, which means that Thunderbelt provides a good amount of base stats for its price. Now, if you're wondering how I got this number, I have included the explanation of how I calculate base stat goal efficiency in the pinned comment below, so check it out if you're interested. Otherwise, just trust me bro. So, given that Thunderbelt has a good base stat efficiency, anything additional is actually a bonus, which is great, as it has a fantastic passive to go along with that. Thunderbelt's passive is called Thunderbolt, and it reads, every 4 seconds, the next basic attack deals 50 plus 100% total physical defense plus 100% total magic defense, extra true damage to the target and enemies around them, and briefly slows them by 99%. Hybrid defense permanently increases by 1 each time the attack hits an enemy hero. This effect is reduced to 50% for marksmen and mages. So, let me just break this long wall of text down and show you exactly how it works. So firstly, every 4 seconds, your next basic attack will activate the Thunderbolt passive. It will deal AoE true damage based on your physical and magic defense stats, which also slows enemies in the area of effect. Secondly, whenever you activate this effect on an enemy hero, you will gain a Thunderbelt stack. Each stack gives you 1 point of hybrid defense, which is short for both magic and physical defense. So, for example, if you have 5 stacks, you'll gain 5 points of both magic and physical defense. Now, there are 2 things to note about the stack triggers. First, you only gain stacks when the passive AoE damage hits an enemy hero. For example, here we have Kaja, whose basic attack has a chain effect that can hit multiple targets. However, you can see here that even though our basic attack does hit the enemy hero, the Thunderbelt passive did not, and therefore did not increase our stacks. The second thing to note is that you can actually gain multiple stacks with a single activation of the passive as long as the effect damages multiple enemies. For example, we have 4 enemy heroes here. You'll see that we'll gain 4 extra Thunderbelt stacks whenever we trigger the passive. Moving on to the third part of the passive, marksmen and mage heroes only gain half of the effects from the passive. This includes the hybrid defense gain, and the true damage, and the slow effect dealt when the passive activates. Now that we have seen how Thunderbelt works, let us see how we can actually maximize the true damage from the passive and what works best with it. So, the damage from the passive is pretty simple. It's just 50 plus physical defense plus magic defense. And if you're using a marksman or mage, you just divide this by 2. Just to make sure, here is a quick test to show that it's working correctly. Over here, we can see that we have Thunderbelt equipped and we have 95 physical defense and 66 magic defense. So, according to the formula, the true damage from Thunderbelt will be 50 plus 95 plus 66, which gives us 211. Now, let's try it. Okay, so the actual number is 213, which is 2 more damage than what was theorized. This is because we actually gained 1 extra point of physical and magic defense from the Thunderbelt stack, which was applied before the damage was dealt. Therefore, the actual math was 50 plus 96 plus 67, which gives us 213. This proves that it's working correctly. And now, let's test it on a marksman. So, our physical defense is 95 and our magic defense is 65. According to the formula, the true damage from Thunderbelt will be 50 plus 95 plus 65 and then plus 0.5 plus 0.5 from the hybrid defense gain with the stack increase, and then finally divided by 2. Remember that both the hybrid defense gain and the damage are halved for marksmen and mages. This gives us 105.5, which is then rounded down to 105. Now, let's see it in action. Great, this proves that the damage is indeed halved. Okay, so now we can begin looking at the theoretical damage that Thunderbelt can actually do. We are mainly looking at 3 categories of heroes. First are the marksmen and mages who have low base defense growth and typically do not build defense items. Second are non-tanks such as fighters that have mid defense growth and may build a couple of defense items. And lastly, we have tanks who have high defense growth and fully built defense items. So starting off, Thunderbelt at base already gives a total of 30 defense for its base stats. We can consider that it starts at 40 true damage from the passive. Once again, I must remind you that the damage is halved because we are talking about marksmen and mages. For context, the average HP of a squishy target in the late game at level 15 is around 4500, and so 40 damage is only 1% of their HP. Of course, we won't only have 30 total defense throughout the game. If you're getting Thunderbelt as a first item, you can expect to get it around level 6 to 7. The total base defense of your hero should be around 60 to 80 at this point, depending on the hero you're playing. Including the 30 defense from Thunderbelt, we are looking at around 90 to 110 total defense. So, the damage from the Thunderbelt passive is merely 70 to 80 each time it activates, which is barely 2% of a squishy's HP. In the late game and at max level, we can expect our total base defense to be around 120 to 140. Including Thunderbelt's defense, the total defense is around 150 to 170, which means the true damage from the passive is around 100 to 110, and barely 3% of an enemy squishy's HP. That's hardly impressive. However, you might argue that you amassed a good amount of Thunderbelt stacks throughout the game. So, let's say we give a generous estimate of 50 Thunderbelt stacks, which is 50 additional total defense, which brings our total defense to 200 to 220. We are still only dealing 125 to 135 true damage from the passive, which is barely 3% of a squishy's HP each time you activate the passive on them. So, building Thunderbelt on a marksman or mage without any other defense items isn't effective in terms of dealing damage through the passive. But does Thunderbelt actually offer good value in terms of defense? Well, since Thunderbelt does not offer a defensive passive, most of the value is gained from its defense stats. So, let's take a look at how much defense it offers. Thunderbelt gives 15 physical and magic defense at base. Now let's compare it to Oracle, which is the only other defense item that provides hybrid defense. So, in order for Thunderbelt to have the same amount of defense, it just needs 10 stacks, which is pretty easy to reach if you are playing a marksman with good range. However, Oracle is not a common defensive item for marksmen to buy. Athena's Shield is a common magic defense item to get for marksmen and mages to defend themselves against magic damage, and it provides 48 magic defense. For Thunderbelt to achieve 48 magic defense as a marksman or mage, you will need 66 Thunderbelt stacks. Plus, you will also not have Athena Shield's passive, which grants additional 25% magic damage reduction. But you also gain 48 physical defense if you have 66 stacks, which is useful as long as you're not fighting against a full magic enemy lineup. Overall, I think Thunderbelt can be a decent defensive option if you're playing a marksman with good range that can easily build stacks. However, it will still depend on whether you are able to build up those stacks to gain good value by the late game. If you're not able to build a high amount of stacks, Thunderbelt is not that good on marksmen or mages. Moving on, we have the non-tank heroes like Lapu Lapu and Yuzong, who typically build some defense items. For the early game at around level 6 to 7, we can expect the average total base defense to be around 70 to 90. So, together with Thunderbelt, the average total base defense is 100 to 120. So, we'll be dealing roughly 150 to 170 damage with each activation of the passive. That is slightly below 5% of a squishy's HP. In the late game, we can expect our average total defense to be around 130 to 140. From my experience, we can realistically expect to build around 20 stacks of Thunderbelt by the late game. So, including the defense gains from Thunderbelt, we can expect our average total defense to be around 200 to 210, which means we will deal around 250 to 260 damage per activation of the passive. That's about 5.6% of a squishy's HP, which is not too bad. Now, let's assume some common defensive items that are built. Dominant Size is pretty common to be built on fighters to counter sustain, and it provides 55 physical defense. Adding that in, we'll have around 255 to 265 total physical defense. This gives us around 310 damage, which is about 7% of a squishy's HP. Oracle is pretty common as well, and it provides 40 total defense. Adding that in, we have around 295 to 305 total defense, which gives us 350 damage. That is close to 8% of a squishy's HP. Overall, I think that is pretty good, as Thunderbelt can contribute quite a decent amount of damage and will also help to slow enemies, which is great for fighters since they are close range. The added defensive stats from the stacks will also help to make them tankier so they can sustain even longer in fights. Next, we have the actual tanks that build full defense. These are heroes like Tigreal or Franco that concentrate on building full defensive items to make themselves more tanky by the late game. So, we start at the early game again, at level 6 to 7. Our average total defense on tanks will be around 100 to 120. So, together with Thunderbelt, we can expect our average total defense to be around 130 to 150. This means that Thunderbelt will be dealing 180 to 200 damage per activation, which is around 5% of a squishy HP. Tanks may find it more difficult to build stacks due to their short range. So let's assume by late game, we have around 20 stacks again. Our average total defense at level 15 would be around 200 to 210. Together with Thunderbelt and its stacks, the average total defense would be around 250 to 260, which means we'll be dealing around 300 damage per activation. That's around 7% of a squishy HP. However, we are of course building plenty of defensive items as well, which will increase this damage. Let's assume some pretty common defensive items in our build. So, Dominance Ice, Athena Shield, Antique Cuirass, and Blade Armor. Our average total defense would be around 520 with this build. In that case, Thunderbelt will actually deal a whopping 570 damage per activation, which is around 12% of a squishy's HP. This is actually pretty significant, and it's a solid amount of damage as a tank. So, from our analysis so far, we can see that Thunderbelt would work best if you're actually going full defense based on stats alone. Now let's consider if you should actually build Thunderbelt as a first item, or is it okay to delay and build it later on. Naturally, since you can only build stacks after buying Thunderbelt, most players want to buy Thunderbelt as early as possible to start building those stacks. However, with a full defense build, these stacks are actually not that significant. Considering a realistic estimate of around 20 stacks if you build Thunderbelt early, and assuming a full tank build which gives us around 520 total defense, those 20 stacks only contribute to around 8% of your total defense. This will deal 570 damage from the passive. But even without those 20 stacks, we could have 480 total defense and deal 520 damage from the passive, which is only about a 7% decrease in damage, so it's not really a major difference. I would argue that if you have more important items to build earlier, such as Dominance Ice, those should actually take higher priority, since you can still have great damage on Thunderbelt even if you build it later on when going with a full defense build. However, if you're not going for many defensive items, or if you're playing a hero like Kufra that can easily and constantly activate the passive, you should consider getting this item earlier. Now, I want to point out some heroes that are pretty good users of Thunderbelt. Some heroes are able to gain defensive stats through their kit, which helps them deal more damage with the passive. For example, Roger can gain up to 70 hybrid defense when he's in wolf form, which translates into an additional 140 true damage on Thunderbelt. Barats can also gain up to 90 hybrid defense from his passive, which allows him to deal additional 180 true damage from Thunderbelt. Kufra is one of the best users of Thunderbelt as his passive allows him to do a ranged basic attack every 12 seconds, therefore allowing him to activate Thunderbelt's passive quite easily. His skill 2 Bouncing Ball also lets him multiply his defense by up to 2 times. So, assuming a common build on Kufra of Tough Boots, Thunderbelt with 20 stacks, Curse Helmet, Dominance Ice, Athena Shield and Blade Armor, we would have 289 physical defense and 202 magic defense, which is 491 total defense. We can double this with Bouncing Ball to 982, which means if we activate the Thunderbelt passive, we can deal around a whopping 1032 true damage on a single activation. That's a very significant 23% of a squishy's HP, which is huge damage coming from a tank. Heroes like Minseta and Sun can also take advantage of Thunderbelt, since they can activate the passive multiple times through their skills. I've actually been abusing these two heroes with Thunderbelt in my games, and it has been working great. There are still many heroes that work pretty well with Thunderbelt, like Chip, Badang, Edith, Gatot Kacha, Alot, Khalid, and many more. So, have you started using Thunderbelt yet? What other heroes do you think work well with this item? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you again in the next one.